Okay, so I think that's it. Good morning, everyone. It's nice to see some faces and to have some good participation in these virtual events. I'm sure, like almost everyone, your life has been a little bit turned upside down and backwards, and we're trying really hard to maintain some of the programming that we were originally going to do this year. We'll definitely be doing virtual programs through at least the summer. And if you have any ideas on what kinds of virtual programming you'd like to see next, please let us know. You can just let me know in the chat, or you can send the North Carolina room an email at pacnc@buncombecounty.org. We're looking for more stuff to do. We're starting to get to the end of our list of virtual programming ideas. So we'd really like to hear from you about what you'd like to see. We've done several of these already, and the recordings of those are up on our YouTube channel, and as of this morning on our Facebook page. They're all between 30 minutes and an hour long, thereabouts. We've covered topics like navigating Ancestry Library Edition and Heritage Quest. We've talked about some of the best resources out there for looking up and finding more information on your African American ancestors, in particular those who were enslaved or formerly enslaved. And we've also had a couple of book talks. We had Dan Pierce come talk about his latest work, Tar Heel Lightning. So we're looking for more stuff, and if you want something to be covered, just let us know. For those of you who don't know me and haven't been on these Zoom calls before, my name is Katherine Cutshall. I'm the collections manager here in the North Carolina room at Pack Library. We're glad to be sort of easing back into library work. A lot of librarians were spread out across the county at 911 call centers and ABCCM food distribution spots. And starting today, we are doing curbside hold pickup service at 4 of our branches. So if you are desperate for new reading material, you can place a hold online using your library card or call a branch. We have hold pickup service at North Asheville, West Asheville, South Buncombe, the Skyland branch, or Black Mountain. So we're going to offer those from 1 p.m. to 5 p.m. on Tuesday, Thursday, and Saturday. So fear not, those of you looking for new reading material. The North Carolina room probably won't open up for a while, and when we do, it will be some form of appointment-only access. But do know that a lot of our resources are available online at ncroom.buncombecounty.org, and then we also have a WordPress blog, and the address for that is packlibraryncroom.com. So we're here, we're available to answer your questions. We like doing reference work in person, but we've been trying our best to do it virtually. So just know that your librarians are here for you, even during this funky time. So today we're going to talk a little bit about newspapers.com, and I'll go ahead and share my screen. Let's see. All right, sometimes the screen sharing thing can be a little clunky. So newspapers.com is a service that is affiliated with Ancestry. It is an international online database of, you can see here, over 500 million individual pages of newsprint. These go back to the 17th century in some cases. And it's essentially what newspapers.com is it is scanned, digitized microfilm, just like you would see here at the library and use on a big microfilm reader. And then it's run through a piece of software called OCR, or optical character recognition. And with the optical character recognition, many of you have probably seen this with a PDF. You can find keywords within what you're searching for. So it's really, you know, newspapers.com came out really as I started my undergraduate career in history. And one of the things that I heard a lot from my professors was that it sort of changes everything and they almost wish it didn't exist because it makes them want to go back and redo years and years of research. But I got pretty lucky. And then when I started in the North Carolina room a couple years ago, Zoe and Ann had to pick on me a little bit because I didn't know how to operate the microfilm reader because I had been spoiled with newspapers.com for so long. But we do still use the old microfilm, but newspapers.com is really sort of a revolutionary way of finding out this kind of things that you're looking for. So what we're going to do, we'll do this a lot like we did our Ancestry Library talk. I'm just going to follow each one of these tabs here at the top and show you around and how things work. You can see here I am logged in to the paid newspapers.com service under our library account. Newspapers.com is about $60 every 6 months, this publisher extra. But one of the things we'll look at today before we finish is a version of newspapers.com that is available for free all the time using your library card. So we'll go ahead and get started. This is the home page you're going to see when you log into newspapers.com. If you scroll down, they give a sort of a featured headline for every day. There's some recently added newspapers. They're always adding new things, and so they'll show you what those new ones are. And then there's some help over here. They're mostly sort of basic get started videos, but there are some other more in-depth things in there as well. So check those out if you're going to be using newspapers.com a lot. This search tab isn't much different from the home page tab, but what it will do is show you some of your recent searches. And we also have some saved searches that we do all the time. So it looks just like that home page. There's also this Browse tab. Browse is really useful when you know, or well, yeah, if you have a date in particular. So let's say that I was looking for a paper in Raleigh, North Carolina, published on July 4th, 1940. It's very specific. So we'll choose our country here as the US. We'll scroll down to find North Carolina. It's now going to give me all of these cities. So we'll scroll down to find Raleigh. Let's see, there it is. And now it's going to show me all of the papers from Raleigh. So you can scroll through and see a lot of these are historical papers, like you might imagine, but then you'll notice there are some that have this yellow little plus sign next to them. That means that those are papers that are actively being published. So they have historical material available, but usually with the Citizen Times, they're only about a month behind on the latest new papers. So we'll click on the News and Observer. And then it's going to show me all of the years. So there's 136 years of the Raleigh News and Observer. And we said we wanted something from 1940. So we'll scroll down here. Here's 1940. And now it's going to show me all of the months. We said July. And July 4th, 1940. And you can see it sort of shows you the number of pages that are in that particular newspaper. But if you, for instance, if you did happen to have your date and the page number, it would make it very easy for you to just click on and say, oh, I know that the article I'm looking for is on page 8 of the Raleigh News and Observer on July 4th, 1940. But we'll click on this big page here. Once you click on a page, it opens up for a larger view. So there's that paper. We'll talk a little bit more about how to save some things here in just a second. But the browse, again, is really nice if you have a particular date or a particular range of dates or a specific paper in mind. It's also nice just to say, you know, I'm doing some research about Alaska. So you can click on Alaska, and I'm interested in Sitka, Alaska, and it will show you what is available for Sitka, Alaska. A lot of times there'll be 1 or 2 papers here, so you can choose one that relates to your particular time period. If we were to click on this little eye here, this is going to take us to a landing page for the Daily Sitka Sentinel. So it'll tell you a little bit more about that paper, how many pages there are, where Sitka is, and it will show you nearby papers. So if we zoomed out on this map, we could see that the next closest paper is in Juneau. And then it'll show clippings from that paper that folks have recently saved. So the next tab up here at the top is this Papers tab, and that allows you to search through all the different papers, very much like the browse function, but this one is more location based. Or yeah, I know that doesn't make a whole lot of sense, but this one is more more based around the state itself and different ways of narrowing down what you might be looking for. So for instance, you could type Asheville in here and see all of the different papers that are available from Asheville or that have Asheville in the name. Or you could say that I'd like to see all of the papers from North Carolina. You can click on this map here. North Carolina, Tennessee, and South Carolina. And that will narrow down in alphabetical order here. You can see that will narrow down the newspapers to just papers from those 3 states. So let's say I was researching the Civil War or the antebellum period in these 3 states, and I don't need papers that were not published during that time. What I can do is also enter this date or a date range. So we'll say I want papers that were published between 1855 to 1865. When you click update, it will narrow things down even further. So here are papers that were published during that time period. And you'll notice on each one of these little squares, you'll have the year or years. So in this case, 1846 to 1922, and the number of pages. And what you'll find is that there are a lot of little obscure newspapers that have 1 or 2, maybe 8, 10 pages on here. So it's not all just the newspapers that you would think about. You also have access to some of those lesser known papers that folks didn't know existed, that sort of thing. So that is the papers function, how you can sort of navigate that. The next tab is clippings. And this is where, once you save some things, this is where it will house them forever. You can see this is our public account, so there's about 7,700 clippings here. And what's nice about this is that the program will index your clippings as well. So let's say that I was looking for clippings that were about just Buncombe in general. So I could type in the keyword Buncombe. It's going to think a second. And you can see it's identifying that Buncombe is listed in the clip description. So once you have a lot of clippings, they also become a resource, which is very nice. And if you're in here doing some sort of research, it's also nice to just log into newspapers.com before you start your own search and look through these clippings, because so many folks have used them that they've sort of become a crowdsourced vertical file. Okay, so before I move on, I'm going to stop screen sharing. Are there any questions before I go forward? And again, you can type those in the chat or give me a little thumbs up and let me know that you have a question. Okay. So now we'll get into the nitty-gritty of things. Go back home. So let's run a pretty straightforward search here. I'm going to look for Buncombe County. If you'll notice here I'm using quotation marks. If you are putting in someone's name or Buncombe County or North Carolina, anything that has more than one word, you'll want to put in quotes. Because if you don't, the software system is going to look for Buncombe and also for county and also for Buncombe County. So you'll want to make sure that you put whatever it is you're looking for in quotes. You'll see this link here right next to where you type in your keyword, add more info. So I want to see mentions of Buncombe County in North Carolina newspapers. If I wanted to, I could narrow that down even further, and I could say I want mentions of Buncombe County in Asheville, North Carolina newspapers. And you'll see it's got that autocomplete feature. It's better to choose the autocomplete feature because that's how they have everything indexed. So you might run into something that doesn't seem quite right. Go ahead and go with what they've got here because that's how the site is finding it via its own index. And then I could put a date range, but I would like to leave it really open. So I'm just going to leave the date range completely blank and hit search. Now you can see that I have the same sort of date function over here to the left. And because I've already narrowed down where I want to find these papers, I don't have a map. But if I got rid of this, it would show me the map. Somebody open in the chat. So does punctuation matter, especially when searching for names? Punctuation absolutely does matter, and you should try to avoid it. So if you were looking for, oh, let's do the example of like Dick's Creek back when it was DICK''S, you're better off leaving the apostrophe out. And then the other question here was about, can we find the name of somebody murdered in Montford? Yes, but I bet that it's unlikely to find it on newspapers.com simply because there's more crime in the Asheville Times, which is not available here. But Sharon, if you have the name of that person, I'm happy to use that as a as an example. So here we have Buncombe County up here at the top. Again, you've got the age range of the papers. So I could either use this little slider to change it manually, and you can see it gives you some benchmarks. And what's nice about the slider is that it's you can see the frequency of when this word or this keyword appeared in papers, and then it'll fill in this date range for you. So you can see better exactly where you are. Or like last time, I can type in 1855 or whatever, 1855 to 1865 and update it. And then let's say I am looking for something that happened toward the end of the 1850s, but I wanted to have a broader search. You have a sort function. So you can choose to have the newest paper first. So let's say you were looking closer to 1865, you could have those come up to the top, or the oldest first. You can also choose date added. So if you've been running the same search for quite some time, you can see the newest things from updated papers. So in this case, we'll just choose oldest first. Okay, so now we've got some results. And we'll just choose this first one here. Looks like some boring legislative stuff, but that's okay. Yeah, so Mr. Coleman introduced a bill to authorize the construction of dams across the French Broad River in Henderson and Buncombe County. So let's say we wanted to save this. Across the top, you've got a bunch of tools. If you wanted to find something else, you could change out this name here. But in this case, in order to save what we've got, we'll hit clip. And you'll see most of everything blacks out. And there's a box that looks a lot like a clip art resizer or a text box resizer. You can see when you hover over the corners, you click and drag to stretch it out and get your clipping. If I wanted to be very precise, I could narrow it down and get just this part. And then you have the option to give it a name. So I'll call it Coleman Bill introduced for dams on the French Broad and the year, which is 1855. If you continue to type, it would, there's some clippings that I have that have paragraph explanations. You can use this add more details and it will allow you to use about 500 characters. But once you give your clipping a good name so you can find it later on, you'll choose clip and then you'll be presented with some options. If you use Ancestry and you have a personal Ancestry account, you can link these newspaper clippings to your Ancestry account. You could save this to your computer as a PDF. You could email it as a link to yourself. You could share it on Facebook or Twitter. And they also have this embed. So if you're blogging, you might want to use this. For the most part, I ignore this, but it is really useful if you're working on newspapers.com inside the library, because if you email these things to yourself or you share your clippings or save your clippings and then send them to yourself via email, you can still access them while you're at home. So a lot of people, especially we'll have some college students in here working, they'll clip everything and then go home and sort it out. So if we wanted another clipping on this page, we could click out of this and hit clip again, and we would get the whole, we would be able to start up a new clipping. Let's say we wanted to save this entire page. You have this print and save function. When you click on print save, you get the options entire page or a select portion of the page. The select portion is good for when you have multiple columns. It sort of works backwards from the way that the clipping worked. You can black out parts of the paper you don't want instead of highlighting the parts that you do. And then the entire page, of course, is the entire page. And then you also have this share, which is similar to what happened the last time for our last little search here. When you hit share, it'll ask you to select an area to share. We'll just choose this. And you can add some details. Just call that test. And then hit clip and share. And then it, again, just gives you that option to either save things to Ancestry, to save it, email it, or put it on Facebook, Twitter, or a blog. Something else to notice is that the browse function is replicated here at the top of these pages. So let's say I wanted to look for a different Raleigh newspaper. I could change it out to this, see, Weekly Confederate here, and choose a date and a month, and then the very specific date, and then open up a new paper from the paper viewing tab. So there's the Weekly Confederate from Raleigh, and it is not very easy to read. A lot of these are not. So I'll point out these functions to make things easier. There's a zoom in and a zoom out. So you can zoom out to where, you know, it's just a tiny little piece, or zoom all the way in and it'll start to focus itself. This is still pretty hard to read. So this little caret below the zoom in and out controls gives you a lot of the same controls that you would find on a regular old microfilm reader. So maybe it would make it easier to turn down the brightness a little bit and turn up the contrast a little bit. Or you could invert it completely, which sometimes helps. And a lot of folks are seeing this on that mimeograph paper. It's kind of what that reminds me of. And so you have all of those functions. Sometimes the papers are in here and they're sideways, so you could rotate the paper if you needed to. You can create a full screen effect, which I won't do now because I don't know what it's going to do to my screen share. But you could make this a full screen. And then if you kept running into some sort of problem, just like most websites, you can report that there's an issue with this particular newspaper. Only once have I ever done this, and it's because I came across a paper that had been misindexed. It kept converting me back to a different paper that I wasn't looking for. So if you run into issues, you can report the problem. So I'm going to go back to the beginning here and show off what they've done with the obituaries. Here lately, Ancestry has used some of that OCR technology to index and pre-clip obituaries. So let's see. We'll look for, let's look for Mary Parker. So we'll put her name in here. We want just Asheville papers. And it's better, even if you know the very specific date, oftentimes it's better to leave it a little bit broad. So I'm going to go from 2010 to 2015. And then you might find other things that you're interested in as well. And we'll search. So this isn't the Mary Parker I intended to look for, but this one came up here at the top. So we'll open this one up. And you can see here on this obituaries page, as we hover over these obituaries, the newspapers is putting a little square around them, a red square or rectangle. And it makes it very easy to click on the obituary. And you can see it's already indexed that information, that we've got this person's name, their age, where they died. And so then you can just hit, let's see, clip or save to Ancestry, which I've done a little bit, the clip, and it automatically does that for you and fills in this information. Let's see, we had another little question here, I think. So, oh, this is a great question. Yeah, does newspapers.com search use sound like the way it sounds, or should you search by every perceivable spelling of a given name? Yes, you should search for every perceivable spelling of a given name if you are not 100% sure that that's what that person's name was, or if it could have been misspelled, or if it's in the past, like the far past. So if you were looking for somebody in the 19th century, I would go with several different spellings, and I'll give a good example here. We'll look for the spelling name Pless, or Pleasant is his name. P.A. Is also a name that he goes by, but we'll look for Pless Calhoun. And North Carolina. From 1875 to 1935. That didn't give us any results. Let's try PA. There we go. You'll notice too, it will also search other people's clippings. So there's it finding that name in some clippings that someone else did, I think probably me. So it'll show you the clippings at the very top. And then if there's anything else, it would show it here at the bottom. And again, here's this good example of like why you might want to search for several different names. We'll look at this clipping here. See, it didn't even pick up that P.A. Calhoun. Sometimes you might want to put in that punctuation just so it will find exactly what you are looking for. But when it comes to people with interesting names, or at the turn of the 20th century, a lot of men were using their initials, so you might want to try that as well. This last name, can also be spelled Colhoon. And so there's a lot of variation. Just depends on the newspaper and the publisher. So there's one more thing about narrowing down search results here in Ancestry that I'd like to show you. We'll just try this. I'll just leave that date open. Let's say that I was looking for, again, something very specific, and I wanted to narrow down my date range quite a bit. So I'll take my little slider and narrow things down, hit update, and I still have more results than I want. So what I can do is choose this calendar and a year. Let's try and see, we've got our settings set to 1888. Aha, and you can see automatically it's going to tell me there are no results for this year. So we can try 1889, and it automatically populates with October, and you can see where the 25th is highlighted. So the only mention in 1889 is on October the 25th. So you can choose that date, hit update, and then it will show you that mention on October 25th, 1889. That's another very useful tool when you're looking for obituaries and death notices, because oftentimes those things can be published within a couple of weeks of someone's death. So if you were searching for that, that calendar function is really the way to go. Okay, I'm going to stop sharing for a second. Are there any questions before I show off the newspapers.com Heritage Quest sort of version via newspapers or via NCLive? Okay. So I'm sure a lot of you are familiar with NCLive. This is a group of digital resources that's available to folks who have a library card. Once you get to NCLive and choose what you're wanting to use, you'll want to have your library card ready. It will ask for your library card number and your PIN number, which in the case of most Buncombe County library card holders is the last 4 digits of your phone number. So we're already logged in here, and in order to get to it's called the Historic North Carolina Newspapers Collection, I'm going to go to Browse All Databases. It puts them in alphabetical order. I'm going to choose H for Historic. You can see here's the link to the Historic North Carolina Digital Newspaper Collection. So you can see it is very, very similar to newspapers.com. In fact, it is powered by newspapers.com. This is just a lot like Heritage Quest and Ancestry Library. This is just a very pared down version of newspapers.com. If you have an account, it will save your clippings, but if you don't, it will not. And again, all of these tabs work almost exactly the same. The only issue being with this is that if a paper is still actively being published, you will not have access to it or its archives. So the unfortunate thing about this service for Asheville is that the Asheville Citizen and the Asheville Times have been around for a long time, and the Asheville Citizen is not available on newspapers.com this way, or on the basic newspapers.com account, and nor is the Asheville Times. You'd have to have that Publisher Extra account to get the Citizen, but the Times isn't available at all. The Times was an evening paper. There's a lot more crime and sports and that sort of information in there. And so if you're working on sports or crime, you'll definitely want to wait until you can come in the library and use the old-fashioned microfilm readers to look through the Asheville Times. But you can see, again, it's the same kind of thing here. Or we'll look for Montford. And I wish that newspapers had a Boolean search, so I could say Montford and murder, but unfortunately you have to search for one thing at a time, which is kind of a bummer. I hope that they sort that out soon. So we'll look for Montford in Asheville. And I'll just leave the date open because of how small the selection is. Aha, and it's going to now kick me out and make me sign in. And I don't have my library card handy. Let's see. Oh, there it is. Oh, okay. I don't know what's happened here. This was working earlier this morning, but that's the beauty of technology, I suppose. But the main point being is that this version of newspapers.com is very limited, and you'll have to use your library card to get in there. So that is about it, at least for the basics. So does anyone have any questions about newspapers.com or other sorts of newspaper type of resources that are available? Okay, well, thank you all for coming today. These are always fun. Next week, we'll have a presentation from Zoe Ryan and Joe Newman about the builders of Black schools. They're going to talk about the first 5 African-American teachers in the Buncombe County, or rather the Asheville City school system. I'm really looking forward to that. They've been working on that research for a long time. And again, we'll be doing this every Tuesday at 11. I'm talking to the branch libraries about doing some branch specific sort of histories, so look out for those maybe on a different day of the week. We've already got one scheduled for Leicester, and Erica Abrams-Locklear will be talking about the Della Day photos from Sandy Mush and the Buncombe County Night Schools, and that will be on June 17th, so that is a Wednesday. If you have any ideas or you have questions that come up later, feel free to send us an email at pacnc@buncombecounty.org. And to keep up with all of this, follow us on our Facebook and Instagram and Twitter and WordPress and all of the things. And we'd like to stay in touch with you. So again, thanks everybody. And this recording will be up sometime later this afternoon.